Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the running costumes of this year. I even sound and look worse than the last week because I got a cold and I feel terrible. Anyways, for this year I totally didn't expect Paris to get a Tangled medal so soon. Tangled is my favorite movie, so this was pretty exciting. I knew everyone would go as Rapunzel or Flynn, sometimes an occasional Pascal. So I wanted to go as Maximus, which has probably done before as well. But you know, I love horses. I love the Maleficent headpiece from 2 years ago. So I thought, why not make a headpiece again? The choice was quickly made because I thought the Maleficent headpiece style needed a comeback. The headpiece was made basically the same way as Maleficent, with different details, and it was overall smaller. But I hope to show you better how I created such a headpiece. I started off the same way by filling 2 plastic bags with paper and other plastic trash. One is filled to the brim to create this plastic pillow for the neck, while the other one was only halfway filled to shape the horse face using tape. This is then followed by layers of paper mache. I must admit I didn't take the proper effort to put on enough layers to create sturdiness, but it was enough to stand on its own. Edges are worked on after I removed the paper from the plastic, and at the same time I could also strengthen the inside as well. To attach the head to the neck while also creating the attachment to my body, I used wire to again use a sewing method to create a strong setup. This year was much easier compared to Maleficent, also because I learned a lot from 2017. I left out the jaw and shoulder support. This because Maximus turned out way smaller and lighter, and I really wanted to keep it neat this year. I've used this method for the castle and this year's grape soda pin as well, so you have seen and will see this method from many different angles. The ears are made from thick painting paper, in a shape I've seen many cosplay tutorials give. I used duct tape to keep the shape, and I attached it to the head with hot glue. Additional paper mache would also keep the ears in its place. As I mentioned in the previous video, I experimented with paper mache clay this year. There was this immediate regret after I put on a layer on the headpiece because it just wasn't smooth and it got so much heavier. It did end up strengthening the head a lot, which is of course handy for transport and in case of unexpected rain. Looking back, I don't mind the final result. So once I got the structure, it was ready for paint and details. I started with spray painting white, but using acrylic primer was better as this would also smoothen out some of the gaps. It was scary, but drawing eyes using Sharpie and black paint immediately gave this piece Maximus's look. I painted the nose and mouth grey and the ears pinkish grey. Using this leathery vinyl fabric, I cut up strips for the bridle, with some circles for the knobs. The straps were painted brown and the knobs were spray painted gold. This was then stuck onto the head using hot glue. Now we're jumping ahead in time, but my last touch for the hat was the mane. I tried to dye white yarn light yellow, but this wouldn't dry because of the amount of water, so it stayed pretty much white. I cut up strands of different lengths as I wanted bangs, the mane itself and the tail. While tying the ends, I realized bangs are created by simply tying the yarn in the middle rather than the end. The yarn is then hot glued on the headpiece, while the tail is attached with a safety pin. Now the head is done, so I moved on to the fabrics. I didn't put in that much effort with Maleficent, so I wanted to improve on that aspect. I got a white shirt from the thrift store and created a template for the leather pieces with Corona's logo. I ended up with 2 shoulder pieces, a back piece, 3 circles and 1 strip that goes towards the stomach. Everything except 1 circle was painted brown and the 1 circle was painted gold. To create the sun, I used plastic to transfer the image from a digital image onto the leather. Cutting each sun ray would stress the fabric too much, so I used a Posca marker to kinda hide the connecting areas. It is such a small detail, but it was my favorite. Afterwards, everything could be attached to each other with hot glue. It all looks pretty logical. I did use the 3rd circle to keep everything together in the back. I didn't have it on camera, but some of the leftover knobs were also used as a detailing on the chest. Knowing I want to reuse the white shirt, I did actually use needle and thread to attach it onto the shirt rather than hot glue. To make the back look nice as well, I used a piece of brown fabric as a cape to represent the saddle. I found this such a cute detail and it was simply attached underneath the back leather piece. The excessive fabric could be cut away and I made sure everything was laid flat. As a final detail, I bought white tight socks. I used the upper part as a decorative compression socks, while the actual sock part was used as my sleeves like I do with a lot of costumes. I still had the black gloves from the Mantis costume, which I then used to represent the hooves. For now the costume was done. I forgot to film how I put on the headpiece, so here's a quick demonstration 2 weeks after the run. For the 10K I decided to use the 5K shirt to be dressed completely in white, which is an adjustment I quickly made in the hotel room, and I wore a Pascal pin on my sleeve. It was so cold in the morning, but we ended up at the front of the second wave of sea. I coincidentally ended up next to a Rapunzel and Flynn, which the announcer of that morning found pretty amusing. I loved starting out at the front, with no one in front of us for the first couple hundred meters. I always loved the 10K route because there's nothing better than running on Main Street while the sun is rising. I wish there were more PhotoPass photographers on the course, especially as many people ended up queuing for running shots. Unfortunately, I didn't meet any characters either, like Friday, but alright, running around like a horse made me very giddy. Saturday is always a pretty rough day, as this is most of the time the only full park day we have during the weekend. And with the heat this year, there was a lot of mental preparation necessary for the half marathon next morning. Special shout out to Katie, who had previously seen me as Maleficent and back this year as Maximus.
That's awesome! Oh, of course. I'll do a collage. Nice.
And that was my 10K costume and experience. I hope you liked this video and I hope you stay tuned for the half marathon couple costume. Thank you for watching.
Oh, c'est bien, c'est bien. Oh, merci bien. Yes.